Well, welcome back. Your daily dose on this Wednesday, February 22nd, 2017. And we're going to stay in the United States. A momentous event yesterday. For the first time since his inauguration as President of the United States, Donald Trump condemned anti-Semitism broadly, responding to a series of threats to Jewish communities and some acts of vandalism nationwide. The President of the U.S. said he was committed to fight acts of hate as such. 16 Jewish community centers, it's important to note, in 9 states were terrorized by bomb threats on January 9th, forcing the FBI to open an investigation. A second wave followed 1 week later, when threats were phoned into an additional 28 centers across 17 states. Jewish leaders have been expressing concern for weeks, but U.S. politicians remained largely silent until this week, when an anti-Semitic attack on an Orthodox cemetery in St. Louis, Missouri, resulted in up to 200 headstones being toppled, some of which date all the way back to the 1800s. More on that in 924 News Washington, D.C. correspondent Dan Raviv's report. Let's take a look. Break it down right after.
Some groups concerned about a rise in anti-Semitic attitudes and threats made against Jewish communities say finally the president, on his 32nd day in office, spoke out about that.
This tour was a meaningful reminder of why we have to fight bigotry, intolerance, and hatred in all of its very ugly forms. The anti-Semitic threats targeting our Jewish community and community centers are horrible and are painful, and a very sad reminder of the work that still must be done to root out hate and prejudice and evil.
He was speaking at the National Museum of African American History. Last week, Trump was asked twice about growing anti-Semitism and what does he think about dozens of bomb threats recently against Jewish community centers in the United States. He said you'll never see anyone less anti-Semitic or less racist than he is. When a pro-Trump Orthodox Jewish reporter said he's not accusing the president of being anti-Semitic, but wonders what the administration might say and do, Trump was offended. Trump spokesman Sean Spicer, at his daily White House briefing on Tuesday, was asked what Trump now may do if dangers to American Jews are on the rise.
I think the president's going to do what he's talked about since election night. It's through deed and action. Talk about how we can unify this country and speak out against, hate, anti-Semitism, racism, and he's going to continue to do that. And I think that he will show you over the course of months and years, through what he does in terms of his policies and his speech, that he is going to be a president that brings people together, that unites them, and that speaks very, very forcefully against those who are seeking to do hate or to tear people down because of their religion or their gender or the color of their skin.
Joining me in studio, Haaretz columnist Bradley Burston. But first, let's go straight via Skype to Washington, D.C., where we're joined by Times of Israel correspondent Rebecca Shimoni-Stoll. Rebecca, good morning to you. Very little time, sadly. Let me ask you real quick. Why yesterday, do you think? Because we're coming on the heels of a week, we've covered that a lot, where we saw the President of the United States shoot down a Jewish reporter when he tried to ask the question, what will you do about this uptick? What is the reaction of Jewish communities this morning around the states to the President vowing to fight anti-Semitism?
Well, to answer 2 questions very quickly. First of all, of course, Trump's comments yesterday came after 2 important people in his life responded. First, his daughter Ivanka Trump responded via Twitter, condemning the anti-Semitic incidents. And perhaps more significantly, his former opponent, Hillary Clinton, responded via Twitter hours before Trump decided to make comments saying that she condemned it and noting that they were waiting for an administration response. Jewish communities here and Jewish organizations have welcomed the response, but some have noted that they need to see more actions behind the words, that the words, as late as they did come, and after so many incidents, they need to see a little bit more meat behind the condemnation.
With me in studio, don't go away, Rebecca. With me in studio is Bradley Burston, columnist for Haaretz newspaper. Important to note, Haaretz is the left of the dial politically, newspaper in Israel. And Bradley, you're sitting here actually because both myself and the senior producer of this show read a column of yours last week saying this is why Donald Trump is an anti-Semite, which is quite an explosive line. Why did you say that?
Well, I have kept myself from even reaching that conclusion and giving him give him every benefit of every doubt for more than a year on the campaign trail and in the White House. And I kept saying, well, you know, it's not really necessarily true that he's an anti-Semite, even though he is backed by the worst anti-Semites in the United States and the worst wave of anti-Semitism,
They
according
all
to the
claim
ADL.
they're not, you know, the staff.
It turns out that if you accuse Donald Trump of anti-Semitism, which you get on your Twitter feed, is the hundreds of people telling you why anti-Semitism is actually justified and why it's the Jews' fault. Then you start to realize that Trump has a lot of work to do. I mean, because the fact is that he knows that these people are very strongly backing his administration, and in fact, Steve Bannon provided them a platform, his closest aide. And so you have to say to yourself, well, there's something he's not telling us. There's some reason why Trump waited so long to condemn an enormous variety of anti-Semitic incidents, including, according to the ADL, attacks on 800 journalists who were thought to be Jews or married to Jews or actually were Jewish, and all of whom had somehow criticized Donald Trump along the way.
Yes, and?
Yeah.
All of them.
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
Mr. Burston, sadly, all the time we have, and I'm sure that we'll meet again, but at the end of the day, very quickly, the Jewish community in the States, do you fear for it?
Yes, I do. And I think that things had to get to a breaking point before the administration realized that if they make a choice between protecting the rights of Jews and upholding white supremacist support, they've got to make the choice for the Jews.
Mr. Burston, thank you. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere.